The night air carried a soft mist, wrapping the city in a restless, uneasy hush. Neon signs reflected on rain-slicked streets, their colors bleeding together like half-forgotten memories. Inside the grand ballroom of the Carter Regency Hotel, crystal chandeliers blazed with cruel, indifferent light, illuminating the faces of the rich, the ruthless, and the desperate. Damian Carter stood at the edge of the crowd, a glass of whiskey in his hand and a storm brewing in his chest. Had been 6 years. 6 years since Sienna Brooks vanished from his life like a ghost, taking with her the only warmth he'd ever allowed himself to feel. 6 years since lies twisted their young, fragile love into something unrecognizable. He told himself he was over it, that what happened back then no longer mattered. But tonight would prove otherwise. A cruel plan had been set in motion. Invitations sent, alliances whispered in the shadows, the perfect moment arranged. This charity gala, under the shimmering pretense of generosity, would serve as the stage for her public downfall. He would watch the light leave her eyes. He would see the world turn against her. And for the first time in years, Damian Carter would feel whole again. Or so he believed. Have you ever trusted someone with your whole heart, only to be betrayed? Tell me your story in the comments. You're not alone. Across the ballroom, the double doors opened. The hum of conversation faltered. Heads turned. And then she appeared. Sienna Brooks, wearing a floor-length midnight blue gown that shimmered like a promise broken too soon. Her dark hair framed a face both achingly familiar and changed by time. Stronger, wiser. Yet her eyes still held that stubborn spark, the one Damian remembered far too well, though he'd spent years trying to forget. For a heartbeat, his world tilted. He hadn't expected her to look like this. He hadn't expected the ache in his chest. He clenched his jaw, pushing the feeling aside like every other weakness life had thrown at him. Let the game begin. Sienna felt the weight of every stare. The subtle, sharp glances. Whispers pressed against wine glasses. She knew coming here was a risk. But her company's future depended on the partnership being negotiated tonight, a contract that could change her twins' lives forever. She would endure whatever it took. Her late mother's charm bracelet jingled softly on her wrist, a tiny comfort amid the gathering storm. Then her eyes met his. Damian Carter, older, colder, a man carved from stone and memory. The pulse in her throat quickened, but she lifted her chin. She would not break. Not tonight. Neither of them knew that destiny, long delayed, had finally caught up. That old lies were splintering at the edges. That shadows clung to corners, carrying secrets eager to be revealed. And somewhere nearby, two small faces, curious and unaware, were about to change everything. A story of revenge was about to become a story of redemption. But not before hearts shattered, truths cut deep, and fate forced both Damian and Sienna to confront what they'd run from for far too long. The night wasn't over. It hadn't even begun. The ballroom shimmered with a dangerous kind of elegance, the kind that masked ugly intentions with dazzling chandeliers and flowing champagne. Laughter rippled through the air, accompanied by the clinking of glasses and polite applause for causes no one truly cared about. But for Damian Carter, this wasn't about charity. It was about justice. His justice. He watched Sienna navigate the room, greeting executives and socialites with a practiced grace. She moved like she belonged here, like she hadn't shattered him 6 years ago and disappeared without a trace. That infuriating resilience of hers hadn't dulled one bit. Damian turned to his assistant, Marcus, a loyal man who understood the power games of the elite. "Is everything in place?" Damian asked, his voice a low command. Marcus gave a subtle nod. "The video will play at the auction announcement. Everyone will see it." A cruel satisfaction twisted Damian's lips. He'd waited too long for this moment. She would finally feel what it was like to have the world turn against her, to be stripped of her illusions of innocence. If you had one chance to confront the person who hurt you most, what would you say? Share it in the comments. I'm listening. Meanwhile, Sienna's stomach knotted beneath the silk of her gown. The opulence around her felt suffocating. She wasn't here for the glittering company. She was here for the deal. A contract with Carter Enterprises meant security for her event planning business and, more importantly, a future for Ava and Ethan. She glanced at her phone, a picture of the twins smiling up at her from the lock screen. 5 years old and the best decision she'd ever made, even if it meant hiding them from their father. "Stop it," she whispered to herself. "Focus." A voice broke through her thoughts. "Sienna Brooks. I didn't expect to see you here." She turned and nearly flinched. Victoria Langley. The same woman who'd been Damian's on-again, off-again girlfriend in college. Blonde, poised, and venomous. "Victoria," Sienna said with forced politeness. Victoria's eyes glittered with something between triumph and malice. "I hear you're pitching to the board tonight. Brave of you. Considering, well, your history." Sienna's spine stiffened. "I don't live in the past, Victoria." "Maybe you should," Victoria purred before gliding away. Damian caught the exchange from a distance, his chest tight. He remembered the cruel games Victoria played back then, how easily she twisted situations. But tonight it didn't matter. He wasn't here to defend Sienna. He was here to watch her fall. As the evening progressed, the auction began. Priceless art, exclusive vacations, and luxury experiences were paraded before the audience. And then, as planned, the final lot was introduced. "A special presentation," the host announced. "A tribute to truth and legacy." The screens lit up. A video began to play. At first it seemed harmless, a montage of past charity events. But then, carefully edited images of Sienna appeared. Photos from college, one manipulated to suggest an affair with a married professor, another implying embezzlement from a student fund. Lies. All part of Damian's cruel arrangement. Gasps echoed through the room. Murmurs spread like wildfire. Sienna's breath caught. Her blood turned to ice. She recognized those images. The ones she thought were buried years ago. Damian stepped forward, ready to deliver the final blow. But before he could speak, a voice rang out. "Mommy!" The room fell into stunned silence. Two small figures stood near the ballroom entrance. Ava and Ethan. Somehow, they'd slipped in from the hotel suite where Sienna's friend had been watching them. Damian's heart slammed against his ribs. Those eyes. Those familiar stormy gray eyes. On both of them. Whispers broke out. The resemblance was undeniable. "What?" Damian's voice was a rough whisper. Sienna's face went pale. She rushed to the twins, gathering them in her arms. "How did you?" "We wanted to see you," Ava said innocently, her tiny hand clutching Sienna's gown. Ethan peered up at Damian, curiosity in his gaze. "Who's that man, Mommy?" The world tilted. Damian stared at the children, his mind a tangle of disbelief and dawning horror. Ava. Ethan. Twins. 5 years old. His chest constricted. Timeline. The resemblance. It wasn't possible. And yet it was undeniable. Sienna's hands trembled as she held her children close, her voice barely steady. "We're leaving. Now." But Damian's voice, colder than the winter wind, cut through the room. "Stop." He froze. "Those are my children, aren't they?" The question wasn't a question. It was a verdict. Gasps rippled through the room. All eyes were on them. Sienna's heart pounded. She hadn't wanted it this way. "Not here. Not like this. Damian, we need to talk." "Not here." But he stepped closer, the storm in his gaze barely contained. 6 years, Sienna. You kept them from me for 6 years. Tears stung her eyes. You hated me. You wanted nothing to do with me. His voice cracked, raw and hoarse. "They're mine." And in that moment the room faded. The carefully constructed lies. Audience. The years of pain. There was only them. And the truth that refused to stay buried any longer. The conflict wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about blood, about stolen years, about two lives neither of them could undo. And neither one would walk away unchanged. Damian Carter had always prided himself on control. In the corporate world, in his personal life, and most importantly, over his heart. But the moment he saw those two children's faces, his carefully fortified world began to crack. Ava and Ethan. He hadn't caught their names yet, but their eyes, those deep-set storm-gray eyes he saw in the mirror every morning, now stared back at him from the innocent faces of two 5-year-olds clinging to Sienna's dress. His heart lurched. The room seemed to narrow. The voices and music of the gala faded to a distant hum, replaced by the rapid pounding of his own pulse. Could it be? Well, it wasn't possible. But every instinct in Damian's being screamed the truth he wasn't prepared to face. Before he could gather his shattered composure, Sienna's sharp voice cut through the haze. "What are you doing here, Damian?" The tremble in her voice betrayed her calm facade. Her posture was rigid, her expression fierce, but Damian knew her too well. Behind those steady hazel eyes, she was unraveling. And so was he. "I might ask you the same," Damian replied coldly, though his voice felt foreign in his throat. "Didn't expect to see you crashing this kind of event." "Crashing?" Sienna let out a humorless laugh. "I was hired, Damian. Some people actually work for a living." A jab meant to sting, and it did. But his attention flicked once again to the twins, who peered up at him with innocent curiosity. 1,000 memories and 100 unanswered questions swirled in his head. Damian's plan to embarrass Sienna tonight, to have her stumble in front of the city's elite when the auctioneer would announce her mysterious past donation scandal, suddenly seemed petty. He needed answers, not revenge. Later that night, the charity event pressed on, but neither of them stayed. Damian intercepted her by the rear exit, his car waiting with the engine still running. "Get in," he demanded. "I'm not going anywhere with you." The defiance in her voice made something ache inside him. "We need to talk, Sienna." His voice lowered. "About them." Her lips parted in shock, color draining from her face. "They're mine, aren't they?" For the first time Damian saw fear, real unguarded fear, flash in her eyes. I can't do this now." "You don't have a choice." Sienna's breath hitched. She glanced back toward the building, toward her children, before finally conceding. "Fine. 10 minutes." Inside a dim, empty lounge of the hotel, Sienna sat across from Damian, twisting the charm bracelet on her wrist, the same one he'd given her years ago. "I wasn't going to tell you," she admitted quietly. "Why?" Damian's voice cracked despite himself. "Why would you keep my children from me?" Sienna's eyes filled with unshed tears. "Because you hated me, Damian. Because your family would have buried me alive if they knew. And because I thought it was safer that way." He clenched his jaw. "You don't get to decide that." "No, I don't. But I had to. You left me without a word. You believed I cheated without even asking for the truth." Damian's fists tightened. "I had proof." "No," she whispered, voice breaking. "You had lies. And so it came pouring out. The forged letters. The intercepted messages. The manipulations of Isabella Cross, Damian's ex and his mother's favorite. How she'd blackmailed Sienna's best friend, threatening to destroy her over a scandalous secret, unless Sienna stayed away from Damian. How did I never see this? Damian muttered, his throat thick. Because you didn't want to. She met his gaze then, pain and defiance mixing in those hazel depths. You were so eager to believe the worst of me. He felt sick. Every memory twisted painfully in his mind. The night he'd left. The months after, burying himself in work, ignoring the ache he refused to name. And all along, Sienna had been protecting his unborn children, alone. His children, Ava and Ethan. Damian's eyes burned. I missed 5 years of their lives. Sienna flinched at the raw anguish in his voice. It wasn't supposed to be like this, Damian. I wanted to tell you so many times. But every time I thought you'd hate me less. You showed up in some article with another socialite on your arm. Murking. Like I'd never existed. And that's when the weight of his actions settled heavily on him. A soft knock at the door broke the tension. Ava peeked in. Mommy. Ethan's sleepy. Sienna swallowed hard. I'll be right there, baby. But Ava's gaze drifted to Damian. Who's that man, Mommy? Sienna hesitated. The world seemed to hold its breath. And Damian, whose entire life had been built on careful, ruthless control, felt it finally completely shatter. I'm someone very lucky to meet you, he managed, his voice cracking. Ava smiled shyly. You have the same eyes as me. A sob escaped Sienna. She covered her mouth, tears falling freely now. I'll tell you everything tomorrow, okay? Damian promised, crouching to Ava's level. But for now, take care of your brother. The little girl nodded and skipped away. And Damian turned to Sienna. I won't leave again. Not until you and I fix this. Her face crumpled. I don't know if we can. We have to try. Because for the first time in years, Damian Carter was done running. Damian stood outside Sienna's modest home, the evening air thick with anticipation. He had spent the past few days reflecting on the revelations that had upended his world. The twins were his, Ava and Ethan his children. The weight of missed birthdays, unshared milestones, and absent lullabies pressed heavily on his heart. He knocked, and the door creaked open. Sienna appeared, her eyes wary but curious. We need to talk, Damian said. His voice steady but laced with emotion. Inside they sat facing each other, the room silent save for the distant hum of the city. I was wrong, Damian began. About everything. I let my pride and anger blind me. I missed out on 5 years of their lives. Of your life. Sienna's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. I did what I thought was best. I was scared, Damian. Scared of your family's influence. Scared of how you'd react. He reached out, gently taking her hand. I want to be part of their lives. Yours. If you'll let me. The following evening, Damian organized a private gathering at one of Carter Enterprises' luxury hotels. Close friends, family, and colleagues were in attendance. The atmosphere was elegant, yet intimate. Damian took the stage, microphone in hand. Thank you all for coming, he began. Tonight, I want to share a personal story. A story of mistakes, revelations, and hope. He recounted his past with Sienna, the misunderstandings, and the recent truths he'd uncovered. I wronged someone deeply, he admitted. Sienna Brooks showed grace and strength in the face of my misguided actions. She raised our children with love and resilience. I owe her an apology, not just in private but here before all of you. He turned to Sienna, who stood at the edge of the room, eyes wide with surprise. Sienna, I'm sorry. For the pain I caused, for the years lost. I want to make things right. Weeks passed, and Damian became a constant presence in Ava and Ethan's lives. He attended school events, read bedtime stories, and painted with them on weekends. The bond between father and children grew stronger each day. One sunny afternoon, the family visited a local park. Damian set up an easel, capturing the twins' laughter as they played. Sienna watched, her heart full. As the sun began to set, Damian approached her, a small box in hand. I've learned that life is unpredictable, he said, opening the box to reveal a ring. But one thing is certain, I love you. Will you marry me? Tears streamed down Sienna's face as she nodded, embracing him. The wedding was a blend of elegance and warmth. Held in the garden of a Carter Enterprises hotel, it was adorned with white roses and twinkling lights. Ava and Ethan served as flower girl and ring bearer, their smiles radiant. As Damian and Sienna exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Their journey, from heartbreak to healing, culminated in this moment of unity. Months later, the family enjoyed a quiet evening at home. Damian painted as Ava and Ethan showcased their own artistic creations. Sienna read aloud from a favorite book, her voice melodic. They were a family forged through trials, bound by love and resilience. Have you ever experienced a love that defied the odds? Share your story in the comments below. What would you have done in Sienna's shoes? Let's discuss. Do you believe in second chances? Like and subscribe for more heartfelt stories. As the sun dipped beneath the horizon, painting the sky in hues of amber and violet, Damian glanced at his family. His family. Ava and Ethan were chasing each other across the grass, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. Sienna leaned against a tree nearby, her smile serene, a quiet strength behind her eyes that had carried them all through the storm. Life hadn't unfolded the way either of them had imagined. Had been messy, painful, unfair at times. But in the wreckage, they'd found something stronger than perfect love. A love that was tested, rebuilt, and reborn from the ashes of betrayal and heartbreak. Damian stood, brushing off his hands from the paints he'd been using with the twins. He walked over to Sienna, gently threading his fingers through hers. No grand speeches this time. Just the simplicity of being present here and now. "I don't deserve this," he murmured. "You don't have to," she replied softly. "You just have to hold on to it." Ava darted over, tugging at his sleeve. "Daddy, you promised to race us." Damian chuckled, the sound light and genuine, a man finally free from the weight of his past. "I'm coming, princess. Get ready to lose." As they all tumbled into a carefree race across the grass, the scene faded on a family that had fought for each other, against all odds. What about you? Have you ever experienced a love that was tested by time, betrayal, or fate? Tell us your story in the comments below. We'd love to hear it. And if you believe in second chances, if you believe that no mistake is too big for forgiveness and no heart too broken to heal, tap that like button and subscribe for more stories that'll move your heart. Because sometimes, love isn't just found, it's fought for. Stay tuned for our next story. It might just remind you that even in your darkest moment, your most beautiful chapter could be waiting just around the corner. True love isn't flawless. It's resilient. It endures heartbreak, survives mistakes, and finds its way back home when the timing is right.